The very, very best bit about being a photographer is still riding the motorcycle. And what a wonderful day for doing it too. These are my top 5 camera controls. These are things which, in my opinion, you really do need to be able to master, because your camera isn't infallible. There are times it's going to get it horribly wrong, and you do need to be able to step in and take control. These are the things which I think you truly need to be able to do that. Everything we're going to talk about in this video is covered in depth in my 5-week online Ultimate Beginners course. Click the little thing popping out up here right now if you want to go and check it out. You can also go and click it at any time during this video. But first, I need to show you my camera being a complete and utter cock. Right, stop looking at that and come and have a look at this, because this is where your camera is going to get it wrong. That is just the sort of thing that the camera will actually get perfect. But when you go off-piste a little bit, like you're on a skiing holiday or you're out on a frosty, bright morning, or photographing anything really bright, I bet you've had shots that come out looking grey and dull and really rather lifeless and uninteresting. Imagine these bricks are your bright, shiny scene of snow-capped mountains. If you take a picture of them, and I'm going to do this with video because I want you to be able to see what goes on. Here we go. They're looking pretty grey, aren't they? They don't look very white. Now, if I move down here and I go into a coal mine, which is dark, see how that just brightened it up? Let's go back up to the snow, and it darkened it down. Your camera doesn't know how much light is falling on something. It only knows how much light is being reflected by it. Therefore, it can't make choices about what an exposure should be. And getting the exposure right is really, really, really crucial. So therefore, there's things you need to know how to control. This really isn't rocket science, but it is very, very important, because if you don't understand what your camera is doing, when it cocks it up like it did over there with the snowy mountain peaks, how are you going to step in and put it right? Big question mark. Look, manual exposure. All you've got are 3 controls. Imagine light is water. If you've got a great big tap with a spigot like that, tons of light is going to come gushing out of it, isn't it? If you've got a little tiny one like that, leany thing, not so much is going to come out, even though they're at the same pressure. That is your aperture, how big or small your spigot is. Now, shutter speed, that's how long you turn the tap on for. So if you've got a big spigot and you turn it on for a long time, you've got a flood of light coming roaring out through your camera. And if you just do a little like that, you've only got a little bit. You're just dancing between those two. Now the third one, that's your ISO. Think of ISO as being like skin type. For example, I'm insensitive. I can go and stand in the sun for ages and I don't really get burnt. Not for a very long time. Jilly, who's on camera at the moment, she's much fairer skinned. If Jill goes and stands in the sun for even a fraction of that amount of time, she will get burnt. Jill is a high ISO. She is very, very sensitive to light. I'm a low ISO. I'm not. I can take an awful lot more light before anything happens. So a low ISO means it needs more light before it records the image, and a high ISO means it needs less. That allows you to play around with the other two for creative reasons that I'm not going into right this minute. Let's make a manual exposure. I've got a shot set up over here. Look, I've got my T-bird against a nice sort of neutrally background so all the shiny stands out. Now let's set up a shot and take it, and I'm going to talk you through the exposure and the settings. Let me line up a shot. Hope we don't get run over out here in the car park because it's getting a bit busy. Right, I think I want to be down here somewhere. So look, we have got here the shutter speed, here we have got the aperture, which is currently on 7.1, and here we have got the ISO, the sensitivity of the skin. On the left is the light meter. Right now it is showing that this shot is about just under 2 stops overexposed. To get the correct exposure, all I have to do is adjust the spigot, the length of time the tap's open for, and the sensitivity until that little dot there is on the 0. So simple, isn't it? Look, so I can either make the spigot smaller. We've got a smaller tap. There we go, look, it's now on the 0. Our exposure is perfect. Take the picture. Right, next, what else could we do? Well, we could, it says it's too bright, let's make this tap on for less time. Let's speed up. So look, my shutter speed has now gone to 125, 250 is too dark, 125 is so close as to not be a problem, and we just take the picture. But you can also, of course, control how bright or dark your image is with your ISO. By changing the skin sensitivity here, I can make the picture brighter or darker. All you have to do is dance between those three. But what if we go into a situation where the camera might get it wrong? What if we go back to those snowy, pristine, white alpine peaks, which you saw it make a mistake with? What if we make a manual exposure over there? Same scenario, different mountain range, because there's a car parked in front of the other one. Let's make a manual exposure. Look at the light meter on the left there. It's saying -2 stops, underexposed. What do we got to do? What we've got to do, let's just turn the tap on for longer and move the little pointer up to the 0. Here it comes. Here we go. We're on the 0. Camera says that's the correct exposure. Take it. Doesn't look very white to me. I don't know about you. To make that white, what do we got to do? We've got to make it brighter, but the camera has said that is the correct manual exposure. Your camera's an idiot. We're going to have to go brighter. Let's go 2 full stops brighter. The light meter is screaming, you have overexposed this. But it isn't. That's correct. That's white. And if you're doing the same thing with black, it's just in the other direction. What you've got to understand is that when you're shooting a manual exposure, it's not just putting that single little pointer onto the 0. You've got to use this thing and understand how the whole concept works. Otherwise, if you just follow what the light meter says, it's the same as shooting on auto, only you are twiddling the knobs and dials instead of the camera twiddling them for you. But it's the same thing. You've got to understand how manual exposures work and how the light meter works too. And my next top 5 is really going to help you do that. A histogram isn't really a camera control, it's a feature, but it's probably the most useful feature they ever put on a camera ever, because by using your histogram you need never ever have a bad exposure again. Look what we've got here. We've got quite dark shadows on myself and the T-bird, but look at the sky, it's really, really bright. What you're looking at right now is kind of a balance between the two. But if you're shooting stills, particularly if you're shooting RAW, your histogram will tell you how much data you need in your picture. You need never ever have a bad exposure again. So let's take this shot, and I'm going to set a manual exposure, but I'm going to do precisely what the camera tells me I should do. So here we go, let's line up the shot. What is my camera telling me I need to do? It is telling me that I need, there we go, it's about there. It's telling me I want about a 4,000th of a second at f5 on a 200 ISO. If I look at that histogram, it's kind of bunched over to the left a bit, isn't it? It's a little bit dark. We have got a bright sky, so what do we need to do? We need to brighten it up a bit. Histogram will tell you how far to go. If I line up the shot again and then start to brighten the exposure, I'm going to take the shutter speed down a bit. We're down to about a 2,000th. We've now got more information in our highlight, in our shadows, and we've still got pretty good highlight. Let those guys go, and there we go. You see, your histogram is just one of the most useful things in the world. Learn to use your histogram. All you've got to do is keep it within either end. It really doesn't matter if things spike off the top. Histogram, one of my absolute top 5s. Now you know why it's so important for you to be able to make a manual exposure, and you understand that awesome feature which will tell you when your exposure is correct, you never need get a bad one. It's completely safe for you to start using semi-auto modes, shutter priority, aperture priority, and indeed P mode. I use them tons. You don't have to shoot in manual all the time. You just need to know manual so that you can step in when those modes get things wrong, like they did with the black and the white. There is a tool to help you with those too, and I'm going to come to that in a moment because that's my next of my top 5. But Shutter priority, you set a shutter speed, the camera goes away, finds an aperture to work with it. Aperture priority, you set an aperture, the camera goes and finds a shutter speed to work with it. And P mode, it kind of takes care of both, but my next top tool still gives you control over that as well. So if you're in a semi-auto mode, the light is pretty even like it is here. It's not at all like it was over there with the bike. All you need to do, and I'm in aperture priority, is concentrate on the cool, great, sexy stuff like light and composition and where to stand and when to click, the decisive moment. That's real photography. There you go. Semi-auto modes, they're one of my absolute top 5s because they take a pile of work away from you. So now you understand why you've got to be able to make a fully manual exposure, and it's not that difficult. You've also got tools to help you ensure that exposure is always perfect. Because you can do that and you know about manual, you can use semi-auto modes. Now let's start looking at an amazing little thing called exposure compensation. That allows you to use semi-auto modes and still be able to control the exposure. This isn't great when you have creative critical settings you want to work with, such as a specific shutter speed for movement control or a specific aperture for depth of field control. But where most times it's not really that important, you can just use your exposure compensation. Most cameras, it's a little button with a plus and a minus on it that looks like this. On this one, on my X series Fuji, it's a little dial which I can just roll with my thumb. When it's up to my eye, I know that all I have to do is roll to the right, makes it bright, roll to the left, makes it dark. How simple is that? If I set up a shot here, we've got very, very contrasty, just like we had with the bike earlier. Now, what's going to happen if the camera is left to its own devices? I reckon something like that. Loads of sky, because I kind of like that. And let's look at the histogram. Yeah. As always, the camera wants to put it in the middle because that's what cameras want to do. We know that this scene is brighter, therefore we've got a brilliant brain. All we have to do is to brighten the picture up. Now, instead of having to think about shutters and apertures and things, what you've got to do is add some exposure. So I'm just going to add, just over +1 stop, because I'm guessing, and also I've been doing this for a long time, so my guesses are usually fairly accurate. That will be just right. Let's have a look at the histogram. Oof, get in. That's what happens when you've been doing it for a long time. So exposure compensation combined with a histogram, combined with a semi-auto mode, is a fantastic thing, and it can save you hours of pondering when you're shooting in a fast-moving situation. If you're leaving your camera on full autofocus, by which I mean you get loads of little sparkly flashes every time you touch the shutter button, it means you're not in control of where your camera is focusing. Your camera is choosing where to focus. For example, if I was to take your picture as represented right this minute by Jilly with the video camera, if I took your picture, now I can choose whether to have you in focus like that, or whether to let the background be in focus. Your camera hasn't got a brain, it doesn't know, and there's times when it'll get it wrong. I bet you've tried to photograph things and then gone, why is it that's all blurry and out of focus? That's what I want in focus. Your camera doesn't know that. You have to tell it, and there is a plethora of autofocus modes built into your camera. My little Fujis, they don't have many, but it's fine, and I'm not going in depth with all of them now anyway. They're all in my course, they're all available online. Do a search, you can wade through it on your own, or I can show you, it's up to you. But look, if I have my camera on single point focus and I come back here again and I want to take a picture of you guys as represented by Jilly with the video camera, if I come forward and I don't change that focus, what's going to happen? She is going to be, or rather you are going to be blurry. Yeah, but let's say you put it onto a continuous focus mode, because you're photographing your friend who's running a marathon. They're running down the street towards you. You think, what do I want my composition to be? I want audience, or whatever they're called, standing down the side of the road watching, and I want my friend running up the left-hand side. All you've got to do is choose, say, a continuous mode, and choose your single point autofocus where you want to focus within the composition, which I've just done. I'm just going to pop my camera onto video mode, and I'm just going to show you what happens as I change the distance. If I put that dot on Jilly's face and start rolling some video, as I walk towards you, the camera will keep you nice and sharp. The background will start to go blurry. You should see it starting to happen now. It is. Look, and as I come in here, look, the background's really blurry. You're really sharp. Imagine how useful that would be if you were photographing your friend running a marathon. Go and learn how to use your autofocus modes. They will make sure all your pictures are sharp. All you've got to do is set them up and use them appropriately. So those are my top 5 camera controls. You really need to know how to use them, but I have a bonus for you. Focal length, this bad boy. Focal length is just the most amazing thing. It dances and is completely in love with composition. Let me show you. I'm going to roll some video. I'm going to take a picture of you, again, as represented by Jilly and the video camera. There you are. Watch what happens as I change the zoom, as I change the focal length and move back, as I change my distance. Look what's going on. Look at the background. I know it's a bit wobbly, but look at that black house. Look what it's doing. It's going to disappear in a minute. Look at those beach huts behind Jilly. They're sneaking up behind her. Look at that. Look, that is a very, very different thing to what we had earlier. Let's come back in the other way. Look, if I just sneak that in. Look, the house has come back, the black house. I know it's wobbling, I can't help it. Tough, live with it, deal with it. Look, you see how that has completely changed? I'll do a quick still, just to prove it. Here we go, here's our shot. Quick still of Jilly on camera. Big long lens, take the same shot. Hope there's no one behind me. If there is, they will be trodden on. So look what an immense difference it made between those two. Focal length, it's just an amazing thing. It doesn't just make far off things come closer. It's a really, really useful creative tool. The thing is, the most important thing in all of photography is you, and you are often overlooked in favour of some gadget, upgrade, new lens, some other doodad or gizmo. The great photographers of the past had 3 controls on their cameras. They had a shutter, they had a focus ring, and they had an aperture. That's all they had, and their pictures were blowing us away, and they still are today. So with your whiz-bang DSLR, why can't you do it? You need to take control of your camera. Then you can concentrate on real photography, the decisive moment, when to click, when the light comes out from behind the cloud and lights up the little cottage in the valley, where to stand, how to align the elements of a composition so they're harmonious and they look great. This is the real photography. You have to be able to control that thing with the top 5 that I've just given you. In order to do that, you can't concentrate on everything at once. So I hope you found that of value. Everything we've talked about is in my Ultimate Beginner's course. If you haven't clicked the little thing above, well, you can go and have a look now. Try a free sample if you like. You can, of course, find all this out for free online. What you're paying for when you buy a course is for me to be your guide, to coach you, to feed you the information in the correct order so you don't miss a bit out and then find it doesn't work later on. So I hope you've enjoyed this and found it of value. Please, if you liked it, like, share it, subscribe to the channel, helps me make more free videos. If you didn't like it and you did a thumbs down, that's completely cool, but please tell me why. I want to know what you didn't like. Can't please all the people all the time, but I can't do anything about it if you don't tell me what you didn't like, and it's interesting to know, so leave it in a comment below. If you'd like to see more of my work, more of my images, there's a load of links again below this video in the description section. Go and check them out. There's some cool stuff there for you. Meanwhile, take care. I'll see you next time. I'm off to go and play on my Thunderbird.